Hi, I'm Chris Sarandon, and welcome to Cooking by Heart, where we revisit the vivid memories of the food we grew up with.
I couldn't believe the tastes and the flavors.
Lydia Bastianich. Hi, Chris. Susan Sarandon.
And more importantly, the people and the stories attached to that time in our lives.
You know, I've been dying to chop this up with you for a while now.
Yeah.
And I would do Julia Child. This is a lovely chocolate macadamia nut truffle that has dark chocolate. You can get it in milk chocolate too. I prefer the dark.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alice Waters.
I was the one, sort of like mommy dearest.
He'd order one side of the menu and eat that. And then when he was finished eating that, he'd order the other side of the menu and eat all of that. Emptied the kitchen.
Food is the thing. Come on. We know that. 10 page.
My guest today is celebrated screenwriter and television series creator, Nancey Silvers. Silvers is currently adapting Love Again for Lifetime Television. Previously, she executive produced and wrote on all 4 seasons of the Hallmark Channel's highly rated series, Chesapeake Shores, which she created based on Cheryl Wood's best-selling book of the same name. Subsequently, Nancey wrote the first script for Wedding Bells, launching a series of original movies that she will write and executive produce for Hallmark. Over the past few years, Hallmark has had tremendous rating success for her Murder, She Baked wheel of movies, for which she adapted 2 movies in the franchise and executive produced 5 movies in total. Nancey's also written and produced dozens of television series and movies for CBS, ABC, and NBC, including The Color of Rain, Girl Positive, Love at the Thanksgiving Parade, Why I Wore Lipstick to My Mastectomy, I love that title, I Do, and A Country Wedding. The daughter of comedian Phil Silvers, Nancey grew up on television sets. Nancey Silvers, welcome to Cooking by Heart.
Well, thank you. You make me sound so great.
Well, you're very important. I mean,
well, thank you.
Please. Now, we usually start the show with a common word, which is provenance, where we're from, because it has so much to do with the food we grew up with, also our families, etc. So where did Nancey Silvers, where was she born and where did she grow up?
Well, I was born in New York City.
Yeah.
My dad was on Broadway at the time. So I think 4 out of 5 of us were born in New York City while he was working.
Oh, really?
And then I think the Bilko show moved to California. I think I was about 5 or 6, and we moved to Beverly Hills and grew up there.
For those of you who, when Nancey said the Bilko show, this is a television show called Sergeant Bilko, which I was a huge fan of for a long time, whose father, Phil Silvers, starred in as one of the great sort of indelible television characters of all time. Never mind all the other stuff he did. But let's go back, all right? Were you growing up in New York? Were you guys living there?
I lived there, I think, until I was about 6.
Oh, okay.
So
any memories of that time in terms of mom, dad, what mom and dad were doing? Was mom cooking?
I don't have memories of eating on that age, but right. I have memories of being backstage on sets when he was on stage.
Oh, really?
And trying to get his attention. I have those memories because people tell me about them all the time. He was in a show, and in the beginning of the show, he's looking for a seat in some kind of I think it's high button shoes. He's looking for a seat on stage. And I said, "There's a seat over here, Daddy." And I guess it was in the paper and it got repeated to me my whole childhood.
Right.
Beyond that, I just remember it being cold.
Oh, yeah. Especially from your later years in California.
Yes.
That contrast is vivid. What is your first memory of either sitting around a table with your family? Would that be in California when you guys moved? Did you move west?
We moved to Beverly Hills. I think I was 5 or 6. And those memories after that are clear.
Yeah.
My mom had a dining table that sat, I think it seats 18 when you put all the leaves in. And I have it in my house now.
Oh.
That table becomes a part of an ongoing memory. But growing up, my mom was from the South.
Oh, so, I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was born and raised in Florida. I guess that's the South.
Yeah. Not so much now. I think Florida's more kind of a mix, kind of cosmopolitan-y. Yeah.
So Florida's Florida now.
Yeah, exactly.
So breakfast we always had grits for breakfast. I mean, and friends, growing up in Beverly Hills, everybody, for the most part, that I grew up with was Jewish. So people coming to my house to eat were always very confused. What is this? That grits? She would fry chicken but we had, used Crisco and, just ingredients that I didn't see in other people's houses.
Yeah.
But it was funny because she raised us on, a mess of grits and a mess of chicken and
collard greens.
Yeah. Biscuits. But when I went to eat with my father, we always went to Nal's, which is a Jewish deli.
Deli, right.
So half of my childhood is lox and bagels and sturgeon and that kind of food. And the other half is Southern food.
Yeah.
For the most part.
How interesting. I had no idea that your mom was from the South. Now, your mom worked at the same time, did she?
Before I was born, she was on the $64,000 question as like Vanna White. She was the Revlon girl.
Oh.
She was the Revlon girl when there was just one Revlon girl. So that's how she started out. I mean, she was a beauty queen, which is what got her to New York City from Florida.
Yeah.
And really bright. She won a lot of speech contests and she was in a Girls Nation, which is when you go to Washington and you take a Washington job for the day. She was president for the day. And so there's pictures of her and Truman. And
oh, how cool.
Her speaking career got her to New York City. And then in New York, she was the Revlon girl. And then she went on and married my dad. And then after we were born, she stopped working until I went to high school. And she went back to school and got a degree and became a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
Figured she'd raised 5 girls. She know everything at this point.
Right. Exactly. So it was one of the next questions. You grew up with siblings, 4 sisters?
4 sisters.
What was the dinner table like at your house, with and without dad?
I just remember we all had, there's seats around the table. We sat in the same seats each time.
Yeah.
And there was just a ton of food on the table. It wasn't like dinner was liver or chicken and broccoli. There were so many choices of stuff to eat. I think she just put out stuff because with 5 girls, you also have one didn't eat meat. One only ate things with cucumbers and onions. So there was always
right.
a lot of different kinds of food.
Yeah.
That's my first memory.
And mom was the main preparer all the time?
Yeah. Mom did all the cooking.
Was she a good cook? Is there a way for you to look back and think in terms of whether the food was wonderfully delicious? You look forward to it, yeah?
The food was delicious. I don't know that it would go over in, a 4-star restaurant.
Well, that's not the point when you're at home, right?
Exactly. Because now that I've eaten in many restaurants, I look back, I would prefer her food over whatever the fanciest meal you could provide for me. I will say some of the best meals I've ever had are at your house.
Oh,
and I learned a lot about cooking from you too. When I first met you, I learned you always made a whole fish, a whole salmon in some kind of a plate that you can put in the oven. And then you have, I don't know what it was called, like a tandoori. So it's a pot with a top on it. And
this is Joanna doing a tagine.
Yes.
Yes, right,
yes.
Which is a Moroccan.
So it was always exciting to go to your house. Forget, the company was always amazing. There would always be amazing people around the table for dinner conversation, but the food was so good.
Well, thank you for that memory.
Yeah.
but I want to get back to your memory of growing up and the fact that mom would like prepare a potpourri of stuff considering what each girl would eat. And what was the conversation like around the table?
I guess early, it was look at me, show me attention. Then a little bit later, it was who are your friends? And then it was all about boys. And then it was clothes and whose clothes did you steal?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, 5 girls. I mean, it's just what you would expect.
Where were you in the family order?
I'm second.
Second?
I'm second.
Second oldest.
Second oldest. And the 2 oldest, my mother called the oldest sister, because that's what you do in the South.
Oh.
So the oldest, Tracy, and I really took a lot of care of the 3 younger ones. Right. Because that's what you do in a big family. In the South, everybody looks after everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think we learned to cook by her side what she cooked for years, which was a prep for cooking for my own family.
Mm-hmm. And she included you guys in the cooking preparation.
The thing that I remember most that was so great about her is in the middle of cooking, when she's taking the fried fish or fried chicken out, she would let us eat it there at the stove. She goes, it's better hot. And I caught myself saying to my kids, wait till it's on the table. And the memory was so clear. Eat it while it's hot. This is when it's best. Don't wait for pomp and circumstance of being on a platter. Right.
Sitting down to the place setting and, everybody waiting for everybody else to sit down. Right. Was it chaotic?
I don't remember it being chaotic. I mean, maybe because girls, now that I have so many boy grandchildren, it's like herding chickens. They sit, then they're up and I just don't remember that. I remember us just sitting and having dinner conversation. I don't know why we were so well behaved. I mean, we had a lot of discipline because we weren't raised with silver spoons in our mouth. We were the housekeepers. We did the chores. We did the dishes. We were raised, I'm sure, with a great deal of privilege, but I don't think we knew it at the time.
You didn't want for anything on the one hand, but on the other hand, you were given responsibilities.
A lot of responsibilities, which I think is a disservice to the next generation. My parents didn't know where we were. Try to be home by dinner when the lights go on. We had to learn to take care of ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, keep ourselves alive, maneuver through the world. Right now, I can tell you within a foot where my children are, because I have an app that tells me within a foot where they are. And it's such a different way to be raised. And I think I figured that out early and started giving my kids a lot of responsibility early. Because I knew it was good for us growing up. And it's very good for kids to have the power of being responsible for the house rather than members of the family. And were you guys given also free rein in terms of running around the neighborhood, hanging out with friends? Because as I was. It was a small town when I lived there. And everybody knew everybody. Like you could walk to school, a policeman might pick you up and drive you the rest of the way, and he knows your name. So it was very small town. Although, I know now what was strange is our house was on Alpine, and we lived next door to a director named Tashlin was his last name. And then Milton Berle was the next house. So our house was the stop on the go see the map to the stars houses in a bus. We were the lunch stop. And people would stop in front of our house because it was 2 or 3 celebrities together and get out on our lawn and eat lunch. You kidding? No. And it's for us, it was like, they're here, pretty normal. And we had avocado trees, so we would pick avocados and bring them avocados. You bring the people who were on the sightseeing tours food? Yes. I just thought everyone has people come visit their lawn at lunchtime on occasion. Very strange now that I look back, because I saw a Lucy episode recently where something like that happened. And I said, that was our house. Wow. Very funny.
That's a wonderful memory and a food memory. Thank you very much.
Yes. Because if there was no food in the house, we always had avocados, plums, a couple of other things. So you could always go in the backyard and eat something.
Oh,
because
man.
my mom also from the Depression was raised with Victory Gardens. So,
there was a garden.
There was always food being grown in case.
Yes.
In case what? I'm not sure. But we learned how to grow food, and there was always something to eat if nothing was around.
Right. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town in West Virginia, and there wasn't much room to grow anything around the yard. But my dad always kept a couple of tomato plants in the summertime because there was something about and those are easy. And I also remember summers when we would go to Florida to visit my mom's family that
orange grove
or going in somebody's backyard who had tomato plants because ours didn't always grow, so huge in the summertime. And standing there with a salt shaker and picking a tomato off the tree, salting it and eating the tomato right there.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. And in terms of the making of Italian food, if you're growing basil and tomatoes, you got a good start right there.
Yeah.
So even though she was a Southern cook, we had a lot of good Italian food. Because if you saute garlic, that's all you really need to get started. Some oil.
Right. Mom was ethnically Italian?
No, not at all.
Oh.
But she learned how to cook basic Italian, spaghetti sauces that, that tasted as good as when I'd go to an Italian friend's house.
Right. That was my next question. So were there kids in the neighborhood that you would go over and they'd feed you?
It's a strange way to grow up when you grow up in Beverly Hills, because I rated the houses not based on how big or how many bedrooms. It was, what did they have out in a candy dish? That's a good house because there's candy at all times to choose from.
Oh, really?
But when I'd go to someone's house, a lot of my friends had cooks and chefs in their house, which seemed like, are these your grandparents? Or who are these people? And they were there to cook whatever you wanted. So sitting down to almost every house I went to had wonderful food served. If you were there for a meal, there was always going to be something wonderful to eat.
Oh, how great. Anything in particular that stands out as being a discovery, something that went, oh my God, I've never had anything like this before. Mom doesn't cook like this.
Well, yes, in that, again, everyone was Jewish. So Friday night dinners were meals, were food I wasn't normally getting, but certainly during all the holidays, all the holiday Jewish food was always exciting because it's not something I would ever have at home. Plus, they would serve us wine, no matter how little we were. And so we'd have a little tiny cup of wine, and I would take a couple of sips, and it was like, oh, what's going on? The table's moving. But I remember it fondly because I also remember mothers one mother in particular looking over at me and said, you need to know what a sip of wine will do. You need to know what 2 sips of wine will do, and better that you have it at home. Because then when you grow up and you're offered wine, you know how you're going to react to it. So there's no surprises coming and you can protect yourself. So
how wonderfully commonsensical and wise.
Yes. And it was all over Manischewitz.
Right.
That was the wine, and it was sweet. It was like a Slurpee.
Yeah. And actually, that's a very kind of European point of view, too.
It is. I did it with my girls, too. I didn't start that young, but by the time they were 13, they would have wine so that I could show them and monitor. We're good. Now you're tired.
Yeah.
They didn't drink enough to slur, but they had enough that they could feel enough lightheadedness.
Yeah.
All 3 of my kids drank good wine, but none of them ever drank drank.
Yes.
I think being that kind of open house around the dinner table,
Yeah.
talking about, you around the dinner table, your kids are hostage. They have to listen because that's good conversation. Like the car, you can always have great conversations around food at the table because they're a captive audience.
Yeah, right.
And that's where so many lessons I learned around a table and then pass that on to my kids around a table.
Yeah. During that time that you were living in Beverly Hills, which was what, through the time that you were going off to be on your own?
No. I lived there until I was maybe 16. Then I moved to Florida for 2 years to help take care of my grandparents. And then we moved back to Beverly, and I went to Beverly Hills High School and then UCLA. I've never left. Like, I'm in this one little triangle in Southern California, Beverly High, UCLA. Then I live now in Manhattan Beach, which is not too far from where I grew up.
Yeah. In that earlier time, was your dad in and out? Like, would he be on the road?
Yes. Yeah. But they were divorced when I was around 8 or 9.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I saw him as much as when they weren't divorced.
Oh, really?
Because he was always on a show.
Yeah.
Or in New York on stage or somewhere. So that's how it seemed normal to me. Daddies come and go.
Right.
But neither remarried. So we always still had all holidays and everything as a family. I didn't feel like I missed out on a lot.
Right. And what were the holiday meals like?
Well,
was there any celebration of Gentile holidays as well as Jewish holidays, as there are in some Jewish homes?
We had no Jewish holidays in my house because my mother wasn't Jewish. So everything came out of the South for the most part. The way that she was raised on a farm cooking. And again, on the farm, she was raised there's a ham and there's a turkey and there's 2 chickens. So it was always a lot of food, but it was farm food, biscuits with everything.
Yes.
Lots of gravies, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's my memory food. So after, when she was a little older, I started going to her house and preparing the meals with her and writing everything down. And great. I made a cookbook for my sisters, their kids. I mean, there's a ton of us now. And everybody has that cookbook.
That's great.
Grits to Thanksgiving to, every meal.
Right.
I have 2 nephews that have Michelin stars. Now, they're cooking different things than that.
Yeah, but you're right.
They started out with that cookbook.
Right. So you are the genesis of their careers, in a way.
Well, I was there.
At least, and also providing the cookbook.
Yes, I wrote things down.
And the family memory, by the way.
Yeah, because when you have 5 girls, there's going to be a ton of kids.
Yes.
We each had a lot of kids. So it's just always been a full house. And now I have 6 grandchildren and they're always here. 3 of them live across the street. So,
oh, really? Oh,
yeah, we're back and forth in houses and I don't want to cook dinner. My daughter will cook dinner and bring them to me. And I don't want to cook. So we're going to order it. It's cooking freestyle. Whoever's in the mood to cook.
Yes, which is great. Because that's the best.
Both of my daughters married men who do all the cooking in their house.
Oh, really?
Yes. I mean, my daughters cook dinner for the kids that can make chicken and spaghetti and the basics.
Right.
But both their husbands are real cooks. That's delightful for me.
Now, these are not the chefs. You're talking about the chefs?
No. Those are nephews.
Yeah.
My nephew, Philip Lee, he has restaurants called Scratch Bar and he has so many restaurants. I don't even know what the names are anymore.
In Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles, in Texas, I think actually all over the world.
Oh, wow.
Because he goes and does startup restaurants all over the place. And his brother, Lennon Lee, has restaurants now too. And it's nice to know you can go to a nice meal in a restaurant and say, oh, yeah, my family made that.
Yes, right. Right. Right now, when when you and the grandchildren are together, do you cook with them?
I do. Like us, they all have different needs.
Yes.
I have one grandson who will eat sushi and snails if they're off. He'll eat anything on the plate. Then there's one that won't eat anything unless it's really hot, and one that will only eat mac and cheese.
Mean spicy hot or hot? It
has to be, the temperature has to be hot, not spicy.
Right.
But I mean, in the middle of the meal, he'll go and microwave his dish. It has to consistently. So it's just all the different quirks of what they eat. I serve champagne with every meal, which is really apple champagne.
Yes, right.
So it's apple juice that's sparkly.
Yes.
I serve it with a white towel over my arm in proper champagne.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, they love to come to grandma's house because everything is basically, yes.
It's theater.
It's theater.
In a way, as well.
And it's always...
Not as well as the cooking, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be fancy for them. It just has to be consistent. We always have popcorn and watch a movie on Friday night. So there always has to be popcorn and watching them. So they like the consistency of being at grandma's house.
Yeah. Are there any particular things you do with the popcorn?
No.
Just plain popcorn, a little butter or salt?
They have to have hot, real butter drizzled on this fake butter stuff because we were raised with real butter.
Yes.
My mother, she would say, would you like bread with sweet butter? Would you like bread with sweet cream? Everything had a description behind it. An appellation.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This sounds like a very idyllic childhood that your grandchildren are experiencing with their grandma. What do they call you?
You won't believe it. Too odd. My name is Big Grandma. And we're in the park. I have a park on the corner, and 3 or 4 of them will scream at me, Big Grandma, come here. And I think everyone's looking to see what's lumbering over, and I'm a size 6. I'm not a big
regular sized person. Yes.
Yes. But the other grandma on Jacqueline's mother-in-law is Nancey too. And she's 5'3", and she's tiny. So she's little grandma because Nancey too.
Yes.
So Big Grandma, I got, you get stuck with the name based on what the first grandchild calls you. Then everyone copies it.
Yes.
Yeah. Big Grandma.
This is wonderful. Oh, now I want to transition a little bit because one of the things I'm interested in too is that when you left or as you're leaving home, which for you was sort of not necessarily a big kind of break. You didn't go away. Not far from home. Did your food habits change at all? When you went to college, when I
moved and went to college, I mean, I was young. I was 18. And I remember my mom setting me up in, it wasn't a dorm because we lived too close to have a dorm at UCLA. You had to live farther away. So I had an apartment with a bunch of girls. And she took me to the market and showed me how to take care of myself. And I remember the first time I went to the market, I bought Cheetos, ice cream. I said, I can have whatever I want and no one can tell me what I can have. So that's what I had. And then realized I don't have any food. I have snacks that I wasn't really given all the time, but there's no food here. So fortunately there was, we could eat on campus in various dorms, but I looked forward to going home and getting properly fed.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember the first time I took one of my kids away to see a college, right? And I remember my college food in the dorm and in the fraternity house, which was basically, just meat and potatoes and
whatever you could make a lot of for a lot of books.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And walking into the cafeteria or whatever the food emporium was. I mean, for instance, when we were living in Los Angeles and I took my girls to volleyball at UCLA, and this is this is in the 90s even, or the early 2000s, the food was amazing.
Amazing.
Oh, the choices.
Any college.
Yeah, now.
And there will be a vegetarian section and a gluten-free section.
Yes.
I mean, yes, food has become way more interesting than it was when we were kids.
So much more. Were there any discoveries that you made that was at least a little more interesting? Although, your description of what you were getting at home was, you were getting a sort of very wide palette of variety.
And I was getting good food
and
home.
Good food, right.
Food would taste like that everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
But it didn't. Also, Southern California, there's no butter. There's no salt. No Crisco. People don't cook with those ingredients. And I realized most of the flavor I grew up on came from food that they don't like to use in California.
Yeah.
A lot of butters and creams and all that.
Yeah. Lighter and healthier.
Yes, much healthier, much lighter.
And by the way, they have found ways to make it tastier as the years have gone on.
They try.
I did a podcast with Alice Waters.
Yeah.
The food at that restaurant, her restaurant, was extraordinary. And some of the restaurants now in LA, for that matter, that are farm to table based, the food's great.
Yeah.
But it took time to make that transition.
Well, the way I know how different it was traveling. When I would go anywhere and order breakfast, it would be white toast covered in butter. And, things that you just won't get in California.
No.
They would ask, would you like butter on the side? But it would probably be, I can't believe it's not butter, kind of. Some kind of situation like that.
Right.
So it was shocking to me to travel and see how people eat, because it's so different than what you're raised with in Southern California.
Yeah, exactly. So your transition was almost a kind of reversal of what you were used to at home, in the sense that you're not going from, and I've talked to a lot of people who grew up on very bland food, and then when they went out into the world, they went, oh my God, look what I've found. Yours was, in a way, the kind of opposite, at least in the beginning.
Was. Yeah. Thick slabs of bacon.
Yeah.
And apple bacon, something like that, with grits and eggs and homemade biscuits. That's breakfast.
Wow.
At a friend's house, we would have cereal.
Yes. Yeah. And if you were lucky, a little fruit.
A banana, maybe.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And sugar cereal.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how can you eat a box of sugar and think all day? How are you going to, where's your energy going to come from? But I guess that's also generational.
Yes. Yeah.
But I didn't give my kids cereal. They grew up having food for breakfast.
Yes, right.
And I think they were better off. They don't come home starving at the end of the day.
Yes.
Because they eat breakfast and then they eat their lunch and then they come home and they're ready for dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Where did the writing start?
Well, acting was the family business. You just do what your parents do.
Yeah. And you were acting in school?
I did. In high school, I was in the plays, but acting, I thought, would be fairly easy to get into. And it was, and I hated it.
Oh, really?
Because I wasn't getting roles like you. It was the pretty girl next door with 12 lines. And what I hated was sitting for hours and hours in thick makeup. I don't like to wear makeup as it is. So just sitting in makeup, waiting for the few lines you're going to say, and realizing I can't eat lunch because I have to be a size 2, and that's what's acceptable. Then I'd look over at the writers, and they were all sort of bent over eating donuts and smoking cigarettes, which I never smoked, but I thought, the freedom of aging. And then one day I suggested a line for something and they used it and that was it.
Oh, really?
After that, it was like that's where my creativity is, not in makeup.
Right. Interestingly, a lot of actors talk about the fact that the first time they were on stage and the audience applauded, or first time in front of a camera and they got a great reaction from somebody, that yours was the opposite. That yours was, I want to do what makes people laugh, not be the engine for it.
Yes. But I mean, that's what thrilled me, that you would, with you act and they react. With me, it's the words they were reacting to. Yes. And then coming up later, can I have a copy of that monologue, or where did you get that? And that was so much more important. So you can get old. Mm-hmm. You
don't have to worry about how you look. Yeah.
You don't have to worry about how you look. And like you said earlier, I've written 35 movies, but I wrote them at home. My kids didn't even know I worked. And with acting, you got to go somewhere and do it.
Yeah.
And writing, you don't have to wait for the phone to ring for an audition. You don't have to, you can always write.
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, in terms of the arts, a much better choice for a mother, just in general, because you don't have to look a certain way forever.
Yeah. And the example you grew up with, the person you mirrored, your mother, it was about taking care of the kids.
Right. That's home.
Yeah. She had a career.
Home and family.
Yeah. She had a career, but she waited to have her career until it was time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Now, when did it actually start so that you were able to make a living at it?
One of those very, very rare situations where I took a class, which I recommend anyone taking, called Writer's Boot Camp.
This is after college?
This is after college. Actually, I was maybe 28, thinking, I don't want to be an actress. It wasn't working. What can I do? And I took a class and I wrote a screenplay. And that screenplay got me an agent and sold, which got me it was a TV movie. I wrote a feature, but it sold as a TV movie. And so then I wrote another TV movie and another TV movie and made a career out of writing television movies. Because also as a woman, we're writing for women and we're writing for family stories. And there's no ageism, because I know more now. I can write as a grandmother, a mother, and the child. I've been all those things.
Yeah, right.
So you know more as you age, and as long as you stay current in your thinking,
right,
it lasts longer. I mean, the two of you have, storied careers, but you're so good at what you do.
Well, and also that's not the typical actor's life.
Right.
I mean, I tell this story all the time. My kids. And they're now grown, like your children are. When Alexis, our middle child, was 5-6 years old, she was asked what her father does. And she said, he looks for work.
Hysterical.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah. You know what your daddy does? Yeah, he looks for work.
I just wrote down on TV. Because it always was, what does your father do? I just wrote on TV. I figured everyone's family did something that's on TV, at least where I grew up. I was on, as a 5-year-old, I was on the Art Linkletter show.
Oh, really?
Not because of my dad, just my kindergarten was chosen or whatever.
Yeah.
And, there's 4 or 5 kids up there. And because of the family I grew up in, I was hysterical. And I would sing, and he kept going to the other children, and they were shy and they didn't want to speak. So I was like the star of that episode. And then when I went home, we had a convertible car, and people recognized my father, obviously, in those days, and they would wave, and I'd say, they saw me on the Art Linkletter show. But, when people would stop him for an autograph, I'd say, are you making them a mommy? Because he would draw a mommy or a daddy. Are you drawing for them a mom? It just that where I grew up, and everybody sort of was recognizable.
Yes. Yeah.
So it wasn't special.
Right. And also, in a way, the combination of your mother being very grounded in terms of the way you guys were treated around the house, that you were not anything special other than you were her children, she loved you, but you also had responsibilities.
A lot of it.
The combination of that and the fact that a big deal wasn't made of the fact that your father was famous.
Yeah.
Around the house, certainly.
Right. Well, yeah. Or in the city.
Yeah.
Your wife knows about this. She spent some time growing up in that town.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's interesting because we have a yearly, some kind of, I don't know what we were raising money for at Hawthorne, my grammar school.
Yeah.
It was a cake bake. And, the mothers bring cakes and then they auction them off.
Mm-hmm.
Monty Hall was auctioning off the cakes. And Shirley Jones would bring you your cake. Yeah. And others, and Milton Berle.
Yeah, celebrities.
The people that were delivering the baked cakes, I don't know how many mothers actually baked them. My mother did. But that was the environment of growing up.
Every day life.
That was just normal.
It wasn't special in the sense that you were seeing celebrities, because also probably some of your family's friends were celebrities.
All of them. My father's best friend was Frank Sinatra. And strangely, my father was older than my mother by 20 years. Mm-hmm. So my father was an older father. But if I came home and he had all of his friends over, was a bunch of old depressed Jews sitting around the table, bent over, telling each other funny jokes. And the most you would ever see is, that's funny.
Yes.
That would be the biggest reaction you would get from, I'm talking the comedians of the day.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what the reaction was. That's funny.
That's funny. Joanna tells the story of her dad going to the great deli.
Mm-hmm. Nate
Nels, sitting there with Sid Caesar and Larry Gelbart and Mel Shavelson and all the great comedy writers or comedy performers. And when somebody said something funny, it was they'd hit their leg 3 times. Funny.
Hit the leg. 1, That's
2,
funny.
3. Yeah.
Larry Gelbart lived on the other side of us. I used to babysit his kids. And then he wrote the book for A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Right. Which your father, by the way, was amazing in.
Yeah. But Larry Gelbart would pick up my dad on the way to the theater. And I got to go sometimes. And I was fascinated by the beautiful women backstage that were, in costume. And that was all very exciting to me, which is why I thought, acting. But then I knew that there was a world for me. I didn't know it was writing. So you don't know what avenue you'll choose until you have a life and see what fits into your life best.
Yes, right. And luckily for both of us, we found not only the right life, but also the right person in your life to share it with.
Yeah. That's I feel like the biggest blessing of all. I've been married, I think, 36 years. Mm-hmm. And you can raise your kids to be good kids. You can do your best. Sometimes they turn out, sometimes they don't. But we had great kids and we had great lives. But not everyone has a great partner.
That's right.
That's more rare to me now that I'm old enough that I have friends that I've known for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And very few have what we have, Chris. Very few have
I know
that partner, which is rare and wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know Nancy's partner, Bruce Brinko, who's an extraordinary man.
Yes.
He's one of the best.
I agree.
Well, I'm going to wrap up.
Okay.
With the question that I ask everyone, and I have a feeling I know what the answer will be, but I'm not gonna jump the gun and assume.
Okay.
If there is a time in your adult life when you're having a meal or you're in a restaurant or you're in a situation where there's food and there's a smell or a taste that takes you back, what would the memory be that you go back to?
Well, there are two places I grew up eating, Nate and Al's and Mateo's, it's called. It's in Westwood.
Yeah.
If I walk into Mateo's, the smell sometimes brings me to tears. It takes me right back to being 5 little girls in the same 5 dresses, Sunday night dinner with my dad, because that's where he took us on Sunday night. So Italian is still the memory, even though I didn't grow up on that kind of cooking.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me always that it's not necessarily a taste. Sometimes it's just a smell.
Yes.
And the smell is such a memory trigger for really so many of us, and particularly for food.
Yeah. So those are my 2 places.
Yeah. What in the deli?
Well, the smell is always chicken soup. Is what you usually smell first.
Right.
But it was more like, if I wasn't eating at home, I was eating there. Because you could sign your name. I guess we had an account for food.
Oh.
So you could go and get something after school.
Right.
And the chicken noodle smell is matzo ball smell.
Yes.
The smell of a deli to me.
Well, Nancey Silvers, I can't thank you enough for these vivid memories.
Can't wait to see you sooner than later.
Yes, same here, and the unique ones. So, Nancey Silvers, thank you for joining me and all of our listeners and viewers on Cooking by Heart.
Wonderful.